I did try to explain this during the debate, but those retards didn't understand it. I hope this community understood it, but I'll kind of flesh it out a little more in case you didn't, right? So in the Marxist view, free will is not the capacity to choose between alternative outcomes, okay? Now, can we choose between alternative outcomes? Yes, we can, right? But that is not what free will is from the materialist or the Marxist or the Hegelian or even the, even in the view of Mullah Sadra, for example, and some of the more sophisticated philosophers on the matter, right? Free will is the alignment of our will with the ultimate cause of our existence, which is objectively the ultimate cause of our existence, right? Now, it begs the question, if free will is the alignment of our will with the ultimate cause of our existence, right, which is what Hegel or Marx calls insight into necessity, and by the way, I mean that in the fullest breadth of sense, the entire cosmic basis of our existence, where do we fit within the cosmos? What premises endanger the possibility of us here and now, right? What is the all that goes into what we are, right? That's the cause of our existence. So the will is insight into that. And it's the alignment of our will with that, right? And the question is, well, so why is it that the alignment is a necessary precondition in the first place for the ultimate cause of our existence to be reflected in our activity? In other words, why don't we just automatically and autonomously fulfill what we are immediately, without mediation, right? Just directly, right? And by the way, this question entirely accounts for the question of also simultaneously, like, why can we exercise our will in ways that don't immediately fulfill the ultimate cause of our existence or reflect an awareness and knowledge and insight into the ultimate cause of our existence, right? So obviously that, by the way, multiplicity is given. So if multiplicity is given, then obviously our will can be expressed with respect to the variations of different relative outcomes. It's absolutely possible, right? So, now that we understand the question better, right, to begin with, I want to kind of get your cogs spinning or turning or whatever in your head to think about how Marxism or dialectics represents this problem by familiarizing yourself with how this problem is manifested elsewhere, even in like a common sense conventional way. Okay, let's start with religion, a heavy topic, right? Story of Genesis and the Bible. Let's just like focus on Christianity. We don't have to talk about Islam. So there's a beginning part where Adam and Eve are living in paradise, okay? That's the beginning part. So paradise is basically when Adam and Eve are no different than animals, and their life activity fully and completely corresponds with the cause of their existence seamlessly. Like the cause of their existence being God's creation. So it's directly and seamlessly identical with God's intentions and creation and the ultimate cause of their existence, right? So that's like the beginning part, Genesis, right? When they're in paradise. Then there's the fall. And then, okay, thousands of years later or whatever, then there's the redemption, right? Jesus. So Jesus is there. So there's a 3-part arc of this narrative, right? The beginning, the middle part, and then the end. Okay. Marxism is the same exact thing. We begin with primitive communism. Then we have the history of private property, the family, the state, the origins of private property, the family, the state, whatever. Private property arises. And then we have communism in the more modern sense, right? So that's the tripart structure that you have in Marxism. By the way, I'm muting this subhuman fucking retard who is just a troll, has no intention of debating me at all, but just wants to derail the stream by spamming me. Hey, you want to debate, you fat piece of shit? You fucking get in line on TikTok and wait your fucking turn. I'm not going to fucking pause my entire fucking stream for you, you subhuman piece of shit. I strongly suggest if you have any feelings whatsoever that are conducive to you no longer being around, fulfill them. Go fucking do that, please. You fucking cockroach. Loud, you wanted my fucking attention, now you have it, right? You have any feeling that you no longer want to be in this world, please follow your gut instincts. You annoying piece of shit. In any case, we're talking about the tripart structure. Okay, so you have it in Christianity, and then you have it in Marxism as well. Primitive communism, the rise of private property, communism in the proper and modern sense. Okay. I remember telling you when I was a kid, when you play with action figures, how I was smart enough to understand that if the good guy just wins right away, it's kind of fucking boring. So the good guy has to win at first, then he has to lose, and then he has to finally win in a final battle, right? Okay, so this structure, right, this tripart structure, we could call it a narrative structure. It's also a given. It's called a story arc. Well, the question of why there has to be a story arc and the question of why do we have free will is the same fucking thing, okay? It's the same exact question. And that's really what I want. I want you to think about how those things are related, when I'm talking about this. Because we're ultimately talking about the same thing. Okay. So, to begin with, the reason why there has to be an arc, the reason why there have to be alternative paths between the choosing of good and evil, for example, right? Between the choosing of truth and falsehood, for example, between the choosing of, the communist position and the false position, so to speak. The reason there has to be variation, Sunset, what's up, right? Is because the thing that is objectively real, the thing that actually exists, is not a one-sided determination. It's not a form. It's not an idea. It's not an ideal. It's not a one-sided empirical object of our sensibilities. It's no static thing that just self-subsists in general. The only thing that exists is a process, okay? So what exists ontologically are not fixed things and determinations. Ontologically, the only things, what it means for something to be a thing and a determination is for it to be a specific process. Only processes exist. Everywhere. Every discrete given determination is a process. Do you understand? Insofar as we can call it a determination, an actual thing, all it is a process. It's a specific structure of being, okay? And that structure of being, structured as a process, by the way, was called in old philosophy and perhaps even in contemporary philosophy, a logos, okay? Logos is the root word of logic, okay? But it's a logos, okay? The basic term for the underlying structure of being in its at the processual level is logos, okay? That is all there actually is. Everything else can only be understood relative to logos, so to speak, okay? Everything, every choice that anyone ever made, every form of, every expression of activity, right? Ever observed or affected or performed by a human being can only be understood with respect to its relation to that story arc, to that logos, okay? Whether you're aware of the logos or not, whether you're aware of the kind of ultimate cause of your existence or not, whether you willfully choose to be ignorant of it or not, right? It doesn't matter what you do. Everything that you do can only be made meaningful and can only be evaluated and can only acquire significance on the basis of how it fits relative and in relation to that. Every human being on earth, all of them, have an ultimate underlying cause of their existence. Every single one. Every single human being has a purpose, has a governing principle of their existence. This governing principle, in addition to including their place and their role within history, within a society, a nation, and so on, also includes the specificity of their determination. For example, as a unique organism, as a unique biological organism, as a unique person with a unique set of experiences, who is born at a specific place at a specific time in a specific context, and so on and so on. The fundamental and ultimate cause of our existence includes all of that. You understand? And so that cause, properly understood, is a process. It's a structure. It's a process that acquires structure in what we call logos, right? Which is the structure of being, right? I mean, Hegel's tripart structure takes many forms and there's many variations with respect to how we can understand it, right? And it is a tripart structure, regardless of what pseudo-intellectuals try to tell you, right? But this is not a structure of thought. I'm just really disappointed that someone thinks it's a structure of thought. It's like, no, it's not a fucking structure of thought. Holy fuck, I'm going to crash out. We're talking about the structure of being, not of thought, okay? That's something very, that's something we can talk about, but that's not what I'm talking about right now, okay? Talking about the structure of material being, not of thought. You're basically, it's like the worst sin you've committed, right? Which is it's like I'm trying to explain something and you fucking say the opposite, right? Like, holy fuck. In any case, the structure of the mind's eye that reflects reality. Dude, I would put you in jail for saying that shit. I would literally send you to jail for saying that. It's actual wrongthink. Like, it's actually sinful to fucking say that. It's so fucking wrong and way off the fucking mark. The fallacy of asking the question of why isn't human activity or any given thing self-same and immediately the same thing as the underlying cause. So why not, for example, a simple determinism where just everything is just directly, cause and effect, for example, right? God as he created and intended it, and then no mediation via free will, and it's just directly, Adam and Eve in paradise. Why not that? Well, the question in a way is framed wrongly and based on wrong premises, because the premise underlying that question is a notion of being that is one-sided. It's an understanding of what creation and existence actually entails and is, what it means for something to be a determination, which is taking one side of a determination and confusing that for the determination itself, which is the classic error of philosophy itself. Taking, for example, a thought, which is perhaps an indispensable moment in our ability to fulfill, our understanding of being, and reducing being to the thought, right? And that's an extremely, common error human beings make. But the fact they have the ability to make that error in the first place, right, is also evidence of the correct path, so to speak, right? Like, in the same way that the fact that people can sin within Christianity is actually evidence of the fact that they can also achieve parity, with the intentions behind creation, right? With the life of a human being as intended and as commanded and willed by God, for example, right? So it's like, when we start out the question of, why is it just not immediately communism, for example? Why this process of mediation? we need to understand that we are presuming that the given thing is a one-sided determination and that the deviation from that determination is somehow an exception. Meanwhile, the entire secret behind the religions, the entire secret behind Marxism, the entire secret behind every type of structured wisdom ever communicated in the history of mankind is that it seems like it's cheap, but when you think about it, it's quite profound. It's that the story arc is a necessary part of fulfilling what the thing is. The reason the fall, so to speak, which is the middle part of the story arc, let's put it that way, the reason the fall is necessary is because we don't arrive at what the thing is as it really is until the thing can be regarded as a structured process. When we regard the thing only as a moment within the process of and that structured process is not that it has to start out good, it has to be evil, and then it has to become good again. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something is regarded in a one-sided way, devoid of actual understanding we have with respect to it, right? Then the negation of that one-sidedness, which opens up Pandora's box, all manner of possible determinations and so on and so on. Only at the third part, so to speak, right, can we actually understand the thing as it actually is in its richness, in its living essence, so to speak. And one of the ways to kind of acquire the key insight necessary to understand why the story arc is necessary in order to just produce an understanding of the object is that the object is a process. The object corresponds to a process. It doesn't correspond to one reflection of the object. It doesn't correspond to one mirror of the object, right? The object corresponds to a process. Even if we regard the processes of having no normative significance, which would not be true for human beings, right? But even if we understand just process in a dumb kind of sense, right? Nonetheless, that's what an object is. And so, with respect to the simple and everyday question of why not all of the choices we make directly align with the ultimate cause of our existence, well, again, the question is wrongly put. Everything we do ultimately aligns with the ultimate cause of our existence. It's just that we don't necessarily have an understanding of that fact. And moreover, what does it mean for human beings to have free will? All it means is that the human being specifically and uniquely is burdened with the task of retracing the genesis of the cosmos. We are burdened with the fact of facing all that culminates in what we are. And we can dwell in any given moment of this process, which is all the alternatives mean, by the way. Choosing a different point in the process of the creation of man, as dumb as a rock, as oblivious as an animal. See, the cosmos, material being, with respect to the shape of man, is hierarchically structured, okay? When we talk about the development of the cosmos in the sense of Ilyenkov's cosmology of the spirit, there are different stages before we end up with man, right? You start out with dumb, maybe some kind of quantum oscillations, particles. Let's just think about it in the emergent sense of the understanding of the development of the universe, right? Nonetheless, when all of this culminates, according to the strong anthropic principle, when all this culminates in the emergence of man, of human being, right? Every other step of the way is still here. Apes still exist. Okay, Amobia still exist. All of the things that are quote-unquote stages in the evolution that culminate in man do not disappear with the emergence of man. On the contrary, they continue to assert their existence. They continue to be an indispensable part of the architecture of the cosmos, the human cosmos, so to speak, right? Single-celled organisms and so on and so on. It's like, not only do they still exist, they are an indispensable background for our existence, even in ways we don't fully understand. We still depend on comparatively dumb ecosystems. We depend on the cosmos. Are you kidding? If the Earth was rotating at a slightly different speed, we would all fucking die right away. If the planetary bodies were aligned in a way that has deviated from the norm, as far as like the gravitational architecture of the solar system is concerned, we'd all be fucked. We'd just fucking die. So, why am I telling you this? Why am I talking about this? Because all the variation in our choices amounts to, when it comes to the ability to kind of make wrong choices, or to willfully be ignorant, or willfully deny the truth, willfully deny the cause of our existence, willfully or even unintentionally be evil or bad, all that is retreading by way of the will the material causes of our existence in a one-sided way. Okay? Jesus fuck. So, for example, we have an underlying cause of our existence, which includes the entire logos that inheres in the development of cosmos that culminates in us, the telos, right? And the development of history corresponds to human beings acquiring insight into that, right? So, for example, it's not that we become more independent from nature. It's that by acquiring insight into the laws governing nature, we don't simply observe them as a static and neutral observer. We participate in the effectuation of these laws so far as they are conducive to our existence. Insight into the laws of nature entails a type of mastery that allows us to participate in the laws of nature, to, in our very practice, affect these laws. Not affect them in the sense of change them. I mean more like to apply these laws. That's the word I'm looking for. We have the ability to apply the laws of nature, right? Practically. And so, like effectuate, for example. So that we have the ability to effectuate and apply the laws of nature means that the process is the real cause and the real thing. Irrespective of whatever stage of development we are along the path of comprehending this, that the principle governing our existence, which is itself the process that has given rise to our existence itself as a cause, right? An active cause, that is the driving force behind all human history, all mankind, and all the life of every single individual, even, I would go as far as to say, right? But that doesn't mean it exerts its causality, so to speak, in a one-sided manner. Because the thing that is causing is not a one-sided determination. It's a something we can only understand through and by way our will. Does our will create it? No, our will has no creative ability. I insist upon that. The human will has no creative ability, but the will is a necessary device to give way to the cause. And the arbitrary ability to choose whatever starting point or part of this process you want to choose doesn't change the fact that once you make a choice and once you suffer the consequences of that choice, and once you internalize any kind of structured relationship between the choices you make and their consequences in a way that is based in a way of life that is shared with others, you are going to stumble upon the esoteric secret, so to speak, universally shared across all human history, by all sages, by all prophets, whatever you want, if you follow it to its conclusion. If you follow the relationship between your choices and their consequences to their conclusion, and you do this comprehensively and consistently enough, you're going to arrive at the exact same insight. The singular insight, by the way, that is the kind of esoteric riddle of all history solved. The true singular universal cause of all existence. But you have the arbitrary ability to start wherever you want. And let's say you want to fucking start being a furry and you want to fucking, let's say you just want to kill yourself or something. I mean, you can start anywhere you want. But if you continue to take the process to its conclusion, you will end up the same fucking place. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter how you start. It doesn't matter in what form you start. If you take the thing to its conclusion, you're going to end up in the same fucking place. The difference will probably be the amount of time it takes you to get there, but it's an unavoidable conclusion. Even if you say, you know what, just because I have free will, I want to deny arriving at the universal truth and universal conclusion. That is the fundamental cause of human existence, right? I want to be a kafir willfully and deny it just because I have free will, just because I can, right? That's fine. So you can die upon that hill, so to speak, right? And simply because you want to prove you have the willpower to resist the inevitable conclusion, right? Deny it. Okay. But when you do that as an individual, right? First of all, the burden then lies upon you to communicate that decision to others. Should others respect your decision? Because if you continue being part of a society and demanding certain obligations and rights from other people that you live with, you're going to have to reckon with the fact that the principles that govern a society itself are not compatible with your one-sided choice, right? When you make the choice of, I just want to do what I want to do because I can, you are conveying, yes, you can do that, but the thing that you're doing objectively communicates and expresses a failure to actually understand how the fucking world works. That's not how the world works. The world doesn't work of, I can just do whatever I want because I can. The world works on the basis of necessity. Any child can understand that, by the way, right? So you can make that choice, but it won't scale up. However, here's the thing. Insofar as you continue living in a specific society, in a specific mode of production, and in a specific juncture and epoch within history, you depend on the fact that society doesn't do that. If all people within society simultaneously said, I'm going to do this just because I can for the sake of proving my will, and I refuse to give structure to my will and rationality to it, right? Guess what? There would be no possibility of a unified division of labor, and everyone would just fucking die. And what would we as mankind prove to God? That we just kill ourselves. Because you can also just kill yourself too. But let's say you have the choice to kill yourself. What does that prove? What did you do? Did you express the power of your free will? No. You expressed the cosmic principle that it is possible for living organisms to die. You decided to reduce yourself to one moment within the cosmos's development and stop there. I'm going to cut off the vital supply of biological, the biological substrate upon which man depends, or and so on and so on. I'm going to cut that part of it off. You can do that for certain, because our will has the ability to reflect every part of the cosmos that culminates in us. But what our will doesn't have the ability to do is determine the hierarchical logic, the logos, behind how all of those things relate to each other. So you can choose any part of the fundamental cause of your material existence, any part of it. But you're only expressing a free will when it is decisively aligned with that cause. And that's the point I'm trying to make the whole fucking time. Your will is capable of reflecting any part of the process, the material cosmic process that gives rise to mankind. Your will can reflect any part of that. Your will can reflect any part of history. Any part of what has been established as possible for human beings, and any part of the singular material cause that is an integral unity that is responsible for our existence. And the reason there's alternatives and variations is because there's multiplicity in that in the first place. There is still a multiplicity of, for example, hierarchy within the cosmos. There are a multiplicity of physical things. There's a multiplicity of determinations and events and possibilities and so on and so on. That's just a fucking given, right? You can go in any kind of circle you want to go in, so to speak. You can start at any point you want. But when you start moving forward, you're going to end up fulfilling the shape of a circle. And there's nothing you could do to avoid that. You can start at any point on the circle you want, but the minute you start going forward, you will fulfill the shape of a circle. Now, if you stop here and you don't fulfill the entire shape, you start and you stop somewhere, right? The shape you're in is still that of a circle, right? You're just not fulfilling it by way of your will. But it's still the cause of your existence. It's still the cause of your ability to have gotten as far as you did in the first place. Even if it's only, let's say, 1/5 of the circumference of the circle, right? The only reason you were able to get as far as you did on that 1/5 is because you're on the shape of a circle, right? So this is what I'm trying to communicate and what I'm trying to say with respect to the question of free will and determinism. It's like there are a choice is really the initiation into a process, right? First of all, every choice is an initiation. Now, you can start anywhere with respect to that, right? But once you follow the process along comprehensively enough, you can either stop at a specific part of the stage. So, like, think about Marxist stagism. You can start wherever you want. You start at feudalism, slave society, whatever. But there's two things you can't do. You can't change the stages hierarchically, and you can't change the outcome, right? So in any structured process of initiation, which you have in Sufi esoteric circles, you have it in Freemasonry, whatever you want, it's like you can start wherever you want. However you fancy it in your head. You can't change the logic underlying the hierarchically structured stages, and you can't change the outcome. So this is the understanding of free will we need to have. You can go right now with a shotgun and literally shoot your ballsack off. but you're not proving anything with respect to the cosmos, because what you have done is no different. It's absolutely ontologically the same thing as a retarded chicken running around and falling into a volcano. Do you know how much shit happens? People don't understand the might of the cosmos, okay? Every fucking millisecond, there's a fucking cockroach somewhere getting raped. No, there's millions of them. They're just writhing around. There's ants and all these disgusting bugs underground right now, killed, raped, dying over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it never fucking stops. It's just happening. So if you decide to take a shotgun and shoot your fucking balls off, you think you're like demonstrating some extraordinary ability ontologically? No, you're fucking not. Shit that's getting blown up and destroyed and whatever, nothing about that is exceptional in the universe. It's always happening all the fucking time, right? We have the ability to be responsive to the ultimate material cause of our existence, which is the entire cosmos itself. But we don't get to choose how it's structured. We don't get to choose what the outcome is. You understand? Bugs are doing all sorts of fucking nasty heinous shit. Okay? And the point is, it never ends. You need to understand the dharmic religious traditions, because these Hindus and these Buddhists, they fucking understood some shit. Okay, they understood some crazy ass shit. When they understood, for example, the notion of reincarnation is very, very deep and profound. Okay? Because they had a hierarchical understanding of the cosmos and our existence, which did not regard, lower things, so to speak, as simply inferior. They're just different stages along the same path, and where you fit with respect to those stages, that's the decisive significance of your free will. Forget about biological organisms. Do you know beneath the plates what's going on the fucking planet we leave? Like, shit be happening. Do you understand? Can we just, start with premise one. Shit be happening. Shit be happening. Action should not be understood as the exception. Action is the norm. We are born. We emerge in this world as actors. Activity is the norm. The fallacy of the free will versus determinism debate is that it regards will as the exception, that we need a cause behind our will in the first place, whether that cause is external or whether that cause is the will itself. But the reality is that activity is ontologically primary everywhere. Activity, the alignment of our acts with some principle, is what is given. The first human beings, the first thing they had was the stars. That's the first thing they had was the alignment between what they were doing and the stars above. You don't start out doing nothing and then, I need a cause to do something. I need a purpose to fucking get out of bed. No. First human beings were doing shit because shit be happening. Can we just frame that? Shit be happening. Activity is the primary. Activity is ontologically primary, first of all, okay? There's nothing extraordinary or exceptional about the fact that there's variations in activity, or that there's variations in potentially possible different types of activity we are capable of committing, that there's alternatives in the activity that we perform, okay? There's nothing exceptional about that. The process by which we act in alignment with our thoughts is one moment of a process. Now, it seems like there's unlimited potential within that one moment that, I can think of anything and act according to that, right? No, because in the third part of the process, you see that there's structure that absolutely limits the possibility of what that can be by virtue of its embeddedness or its relationship to the fundamental material cause of our existence. So we begin here, right? And we say, okay, I have this mind. I can think of anything I want, and therefore I'm capable of doing anything at all. That's not fucking true. Because the minute you commit to something, you reveal the actual laws underlying your existence, regardless of what you choose. If you choose to be a dinosaur, you're going to have to run up upon the limitations of what is structurally and materially necessary to perpetuate this illusion in your head. And at this point, the superiority of Marxism is simply about avoiding time wasting. Literally. Like, instead of having to continue to perpetuate this costly illusion in your head that you're a dinosaur by constantly laboring for materials to buy dinosaur costumes, and it's so wasteful and it's whatever, why don't you actually just free yourself from that illusion and accept that you're a human fucking being? You know how much time you're going to save, how much labor you're going to save, how much money you're going to save? To be aligned with reality, to be aligned with the actual cause of your existence, literally saves time in your life, right? You don't have to waste all this time to fulfill your purpose in your existence, right? It's as simple as China can build high-speed rail and save time to get from point A to point fucking B. Meanwhile, we're here wasting our lives at a fucking hospital. Fucking insurance is... You know how much fucking time we're wasting? In the limited life that we have, we're wasting time. Maybe there's a truth to Landian acceleration in that sense, that it's about being faster. They call me Sonic. No, but in a sense, you know, the reduction of time wasting, the acceleration of our ability to align with the material cause of our existence by way of our will, to fulfill the cosmic order, which is the ultimate moral imperative, the ultimate moral task given to mankind, right? To do that faster, more effectively, more profoundly, more comprehensively, right? Isn't that a normative standard? But then simultaneously, there's another aspect of this argument or this position that I want to present, which is that, should be a given, the overwhelming majority of the consequences of our choices are inadvertent and not decided by us. And yet we live with those consequences and we dwell within those consequences. And that's not necessarily, that doesn't mean those consequences shape us and determine us one-sidedly as though we are not active participants. But they do shape us and they do determine us. Absolutely, they fucking do. I mean, on some level, we as a society, inadvertently, because of our activity, produce a structure and a field of determinations which we, yes, passively acquiesce to. I don't believe someone who claims they choose to live in a life where 7-Eleven has, you know, the range of Mountain Dew products that it does. No, you don't. You don't even think about that fucking shit. You just go to 7-Eleven, you fucking buy what's on the wall. That's it. You don't think about all these fucking questions about how as we as a society structure and shape the world that we fucking live in. Because 99% of how we do that is inadvertent. But you know what? Marxism is not about subordinating the inadvertent consequences of our will to our conscious will. It's about making harmonious our consciousness with the unconscious. It's about accepting the relationship between the conscious and the unconscious unintended consequences as a rational structure, as the logos in the first place, right? Accepting that it's rational, that there's inadvertent consequences, that those consequences in relation to the conscious input form a cosmos, right? So that's the point when it comes to Marxism. It's not subordinating everything to consciousness, so to speak. So when I say, for example, that free will is only when we align the will with the ultimate cause of our existence, that doesn't mean mundane decisions or forms of activity are evil from the Marxist perspective. You know, when people are dancing and singing and doing mundane things, everyday things, that doesn't mean those things are devoid of moral significance or any moral quality. I'm just trying to say that that is not where it's necessarily decisive ontologically, right? Whereas it is decisive. The choice Lenin had to face, or Che Guevara, whoever you want, that is a decisive choice, right? With respect to the fundamental and ultimate cause of our existence. And I think that's just kind of common sense, you know, you boil it down. But, you know, again, let's circle back to the original question. Why the need to make choices in the first place? You know, why the need to be confronted with the possibility of one thing versus, like, why is that there in the first place? And again, that question rests upon the false premise that inactivity is primary. But if we understand activity as primary, we then can see that the attainment of the alignment that I'm talking about, though in some sense it's a choice, right, is the thing we should regard as inevitable. Not because it's going to happen without our activity, but because our activity is an inevitable feature of the cosmos itself. That we are ontologically inevitable and necessary for the cosmos and for creation and the story of creation, so to speak, itself. Right? And that's already baked in, by the way, in the strong anthropic principle. Inactivity is not our norm. Activity is our norm. So the question that falls upon us is not about what justifies our activity, what underlies our activity even. It's that how can the activity that we're already embedded within reflect or conform to its real cause? And how can we acquire insight into that cause and therefore align freedom with necessity? How can we align our insight with necessity, right? That our insight is not automatically aligned with necessity doesn't mean it's not inevitably going to be. Just because something requires our active participation doesn't make it any less inevitable. Because you can waste as much time as you want, but you can't change the telos that's guiding every fucking decision you make. Why? Because the consequences of those decisions give them structure and place them within a hierarchy of cosmos and give them order and logic and ultimately give them rationality, regardless of what they are, right? Okay, Dawes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get right into TikTok debates. If this fucking fat-ass pussy bitch, Dawes, doesn't fucking show up, you are banned for life. You understand?